Little Horse and Big Conversation. Welcome to Little Horse and Big Conversation, where we give them their say, let the horse guide the way. Here at Little Horse and Big Conversation, we have the choice, so let's give them a voice. Here at Little Horse and Big Conversation, Little Horse and Big Conversation.
Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Little Horse Big Conversation podcast. You're here with myself, Ross Cooper, and my co-host Amy Mitchell. And we've got quite a treat in store today. We have Rose Waldrup, the founder of Waldrup Somatic Method, joining us for what's going to be quite a deep dive into everything nervous system and somatic base for dogs. So, Rose, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Arizona.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. I am very honored to be here and just kind of dive into essentially basically the framework that I've created for people and helping them with their canines essentially look at the nervous system layer that runs beneath all behavior in the canine world and just really breaking that down and then also seeing, hey, how does this intersect with horses? Because I know that you guys work with horses on a daily basis and I feel like there's just so many beautiful intersections there. So I'm excited to just dive into all those aspects.
This is going to be such an awesome conversation. This
Yeah,
is going to be
Yeah.
such
really, really,
a dive.
really excited to have you here. Thank you.
So,
Yes.
Rose, so I've obviously got your bio in front of me. So, obviously, the Waldrup Somatic Method is a pioneering nervous system based approach to working with dogs that shifts the focus from behavior to regulation. So,
Yes.
Rose's work bridges somatic theory, neuroscience, and the human-canine relationship, which, a lot of us don't take that into consideration as much as what we should because,
Yeah.
so many of us listening have dogs.
Yes.
So, where to start? Where did this start for you? That's going to be
Yeah,
the
that's
first question, of course.
no, that's a great question. So, like 2 years ago, I had late stage Lyme disease and I was really sick. I was in bed, couldn't hardly move my legs, and I really didn't have a lot of options left to necessarily continue in, the field that I was already in. I was a professional photographer, and at that point, I was like, man, you know what? I'm just getting medications thrown at me left and right. I don't really like the outcome. And so I started looking into nervous system regulation and I was just fascinated. I was like, wow, you know what? Actually, I don't think I'm actually sick. I think my body's in fight or flight and it's been bracing. And, that late stage Lyme disease is just finally my body shouting, like, hey, are you going to pay attention to me? And so I started diving into nervous system regulation and somatics. And after like 6 months, I literally started getting feeling back in my legs. And now, fast forward 2 years, I'm fully in remission from it. And during that whole process, I had my two dogs with me. And I remember looking over at them and I was like, wow, if this works so well for humans, somatics, nervous system regulation, why isn't there a language for them yet? And so I got certified as a psychosomatic practitioner for humans and essentially took everything that I learned working with humans and trauma and his hands-on techniques and created a language for dogs just through studying and getting hands-on in shelters and rescues and working with vets across the country. And so now, essentially, after one reel one day where I posted what I was doing, it blew up and people were like, well, we want a program and we want courses. And I knew right then, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I have to do. Like, there's such a need for it. So that's really how I got to where I'm at right now.
That's amazing. So, to your knowledge, is there anyone else who's kind of doing this? Like, for me, I've heard of people doing this stuff with horses, but it's
Yeah.
to hear someone doing it with dogs is totally, totally new to
Yeah.
me.
No, it is very, very new. To my knowledge, I've heard of maybe one or two people that do it, but they don't actually have like a business that they're doing it
Yeah,
with.
yeah,
I think a lot of us actually intuitively do a lot of these techniques on a daily basis. I'll have people that'll reach out, they're like, oh, I already touched my dog like that without even realizing it. But as
interesting.
for, like the professional lane, no, I feel like this is kind of frontiering out into something new. And so it is really exciting.
Yeah, this is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think certainly from my experience, it's quite a new area, even in horses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No,
Well,
definitely
probably
with
even with people, to be fair,
yeah, it
today.
is. It's very much, I don't know how it is over there for you guys, but in America, there's kind of been a shift where people are starting to realize that, hey, our nervous systems actually matter. We should try to regulate them. And, people are looking more into that instead of just doing quick fixes. I'm curious
Hmm.
over there, like, is that something that's also becoming like more prominent?
Yeah, I would say I would say the wellness market, I think for people especially has blown up over the past couple of years. I
Yeah.
guess I would say over here since post-COVID, really, there
Yep.
seems to have been quite a
Yes.
market for self-care, looking after yourself, and that
Mm,
awareness of the impact that the nervous system has. Because I think all of us can relate to what happened in COVID specifically as
yeah.
a quite an intense, traumatic time, however you want to kind of, however that relayed for that person. But
Yep.
I think because it was so intense, we were living on survival of not knowing what's
Yes.
happening. Some
Yep.
of us were fight and flight, some of us were, dorsal vagal.
Yep.
Very few of us were ventral vagal.
Yeah, no, hardly. Hardly.
I know some
Yeah.
people enjoyed it, but throughout that entire period, that gave our bodies a lot because we weren't getting those signals of safety within our
Yes.
environment. So I definitely
Mhm.
think from COVID, there has been a little bit of a shift over here in the
Yep.
UK
Mm.
of
Yep.
an awareness of our own states, and then
Yes.
by extension, starting to recognize that a little bit more in our animals.
Yeah. No, I think that's a fantastic point right there. I'm glad you brought that up because essentially, yeah, I do agree that 2020 was a turning point,
Mm.
especially in America. And then thank you for sharing that about over there. Because I think, like you said, so many people didn't feel safe. And safety is what really drives the nervous system into those different states. And especially with dogs, so much of what we work with is making sure, does the dog feel safe? And just like even with humans, like you said, if you're not feeling safe, your body will react to that. The nervous system will shift in regarding into which state it'll go into. And so that whole topic of safety is just so big. And 2020 definitely did a number on so many of us.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes. So,
absolutely.
just for everyone listening, Rose, so could you just elaborate a little bit more on safety? And I know I threw in a little bit of dorsal ventral vagal there, but would you like to elaborate? Because that's obviously looking at the nervous system through a polyvagal lens. So,
Yes.
floor is
Mhm.
yours on that one.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, and there's been a lot of discussion currently on the polyvagal theory. I don't know if you've seen the new research that's come out. They're saying that so essentially at the end of the day, we have like the three nervous system states. We got the ventral vagal, we have fight or flight, and then dorsal vagal, which is shutdown. And there's been some new research coming out that's actually showing that, hey, actually, those states can be mixed. Like you can actually be, in fight or flight and shut down at the same time. There's been new research coming out. But essentially, when you're in ventral vagal, which is that most connected state, when you feel, when you're most present and physically able to connect with people, that's when safety is most present. Like when the body feels safe, it goes into a ventral vagal state. Same with the canine's body. And so that safety is key because the moment that you don't feel safe, like there's not felt safety in the body on a like a physiological level, it will go into fight or flight or it will shut down. And so, depending on the amount of stress that's present, because stress truly is what also pushes our nervous systems into those different states as well. And so, it's really fascinating to look at that because a lot of the dogs that I see, especially now working in shelters and rescues, so many don't feel safe. And when they don't
Mm.
feel safe, you don't actually see their true personality. And you see different behaviors that crop up that are actually just masking the nervous system state that they're in. And that's why a lot of dogs often get labeled, like, oh, it's just a bad dog or it's aggressive or, so many different labels for actually a dog that underneath truly just doesn't feel safe. And so it really encompasses so many things at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's really interesting, and it's interesting that talking about that safety aspect in terms of dogs because it's something that Ross and I talk about in terms of
Mm,
horses a lot of the time.
Yeah.
that horses are showing behavioral
Mm.
um kind of behavioral aspects and also health issues that
Mm.
are fundamentally related to the fact that they don't feel safe.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I
Mm.
mean, my main job is I work as a hoof trimmer.
Okay.
And one of the things that I talk to people about is that you're never going to be able to do your best work in terms of getting good balance on a horse's foot and giving them the right trim if the horse doesn't feel safe enough in its own body to be able to
Yeah.
show you how it's feeling and what the problems are and how it wants to stand and like all of these kind of things. Like you need to see the animal
Yeah.
feeling safe in its own body before you can work with it.
Yeah, no, you nailed that on the head. And I think what's fascinating about that, this is with horses and dogs, is that we can be like the biggest tool in helping them feel safe. Like if
Mm,
we reflect that, like if we are connected, if we're grounded, if we're in a ventral vagal state, I go to say that horses probably are actually double the or twice as sensitive as dogs to nervous system states because I've been around horses a limited amount of time, but I've noticed in that short period, like they're picking up on the most minute
mm.
changes in your body. And so are dogs, but horses, I feel like it's way more amplified. And like you said there, like we can actually help set the tone for animals with how we approach them and where our nervous systems are at initially.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think from my own observations of dogs and horses, but I think it's probably because horses are prey animals.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So they,
Mm-hmm.
they've got to have that extra level of awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But
Hundred.
it's really interesting once you start looking at these things and seeing them, like you can't unsee it.
Yeah. No, that's literally what I tell everyone. I'm like, once you see it, you can't unsee it because it's so
Yeah,
apparent. It's so
yeah.
apparent.
And it kind of changes everything.
Yeah, it does. It really does change. That's why we have people that go through and they've done these techniques on their dogs and they'll reach out and they'll be like, I never knew that this is actually what's going on. Like, I see this in a whole different light now. And I think, somatics, I've talked with some people in the veterinary world that work with cross species, and
Hmm.
they're like, these techniques can expand in many aspects in the animal kingdom. And so, like you said, horses, I believe, like, I think you guys are several steps ahead. Like you said that you've been working with somatic work on horses, and I'd be fascinated to just hear kind of a little bit of like, how do you see this reflecting there? Like, are you seeing like just like when you approach a horse, for example, like how does that all pan out like on your side of things? Like if you approach a horse calmly, can you see that reflected in their body language?
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
me and Amy literally echoed there.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when I look at the way I work is very much whole horse. So I look at all the factors. I look at the environment. I look at the
Yeah.
influence, the relational influence of the person and the horse relationship. I look at nutrition. I look at hoof. I look at behavior. Everything that sort of factors in to the context that I'm seeing.
Hmm.
But in terms of that sort of that direct influence,
Yeah.
we like you say, we shape whether we know it
Hmm.
or not, or whether we're aware of it or not. We shape the influence and the
Yes.
response of our animals, and we're not the only single factor. So I think we would be giving ourselves a disservice if we said we are the cause, but we
Yeah.
we are a large
Yeah. Yeah.
contributor
Yes.
to
Exactly.
that.
No, and that's a very good point.
And I think when we approach with awareness, it changes a lot because
Mm,
our intention shifts. If we've got awareness in our approach, regardless, and then again, like you said, this will work across species,
yeah.
but it's going to be potentially more amplified in horses. I think when you approach with an intention of awareness and you're checking in with yourself and going, what am I bringing?
Yeah.
What energy am I bringing forward to this?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because nervous system regulation or dysregulation is going to throw off all those electromagnetic charges.
Yes.
Our horse is going to absorb,
Mm-hmm.
but we get an initial response on
Yep.
on interaction, but
Yep.
depending on the horse, the way I work is I like to create space between everything that I do, and I always ensure that the horse has space for their body and their mind to then
Yeah.
follow what is needed. So, and I think that's
Hmm.
the big thing. We can see changes, but we need to allow time for those changes to consolidate, whether that is within a 30-second, 3-minute period, or whether it's needing a
Yeah.
couple of days, weeks, months, years,
Yeah.
depending on the state of dysregulation or regulation.
Yes. Yeah. No, you nailed that. And that's one of the biggest points that I really hammer home with people that are doing these techniques. I tell them, I'm like, hey, after 20 seconds of touching your dog and doing one of these techniques, pause and give them space because that their nervous systems literally need time to basically integrate and process that information. And from there, a lot of what I do, it's dog led. Like we're following the dog's body language. If the dog at any point in time is like, hey, I'm done, I want to move away, great. We want to respect that. And so with horses, I love that you're saying, the same thing is like you're essentially going off of what they need and boundaries and giving them that basically agency because agency literally also allows those nervous system states to shift because if you feel controlled, you will go into fight or flight. And so by basically giving them that space, that is one of the most, helpful things you can do. So I love that.
Yeah. It's it's just what you said there. It's just got me thinking between the correlation between control with dogs and horses. So how do
Mhm.
you maybe see a parallel or a
Mm,
contrast between those two?
yeah. Yeah. So a lot of times, control wise, so it's interesting because when we try, like, once again, there's the training realm that I see a lot of holes in. There's some incredible trainers here in the States, some incredible trainers. But then there's also some aspects where it can go really awry when there's almost too much control and the dog's never given space to actually have agency and, express what they need. And that's where oftentimes you can see dogs that just become shut down. And people often think, oh, the dog's calm. It's actually potentially
Mm.
shut down based upon the context of their body language. Like in shelters, for example, we'll have a lot of shut down dogs and they look really calm, but underneath the surface, they're shut down. And what I always do is I always have someone like bring the dog into the room. I never want to actually grab a leash and put it on the dog and drag them in because by associating control, they're already knowing, okay, well, this person has some control over me. There goes the trust. There goes some of the agency right off the bat for me to even have the opportunity to work with their nervous system. And not saying that, like, once again, down the line, eventually I am able to then be able to put a leash on a dog and walk them. But I always try to, first off, give them as much space as possible because, like you said, that control factor, it really is key. And I'd love to hear, like, with horses, like, how you guys see that play out too.
Yeah, I think that's massive. I mean, again, when we talk about, so one of the things I'm really interested in is keeping horses in a way that respects their innate needs and behaviors and
Yeah.
allows the horse to be a horse. Um,
Yep.
and in a lot of the kind of very structured ways that we sometimes keep horses, we
Hmm.
have control over every aspect of their life. Like we
Yeah.
decide what they eat, we decide when they eat, we decide if they're going to be in a stable or if we're going to let them in the
Mhm.
field.
Yeah.
Some horses that are competition horses that don't get any turnout time at all. Like we even have control over how they move their bodies because the only time they really get to move their bodies is when they're being ridden or when they're being trained. So there are some horses in this world that have no control over any aspect of their life at all. And I
Yeah.
think you see, then you start seeing all these stereotypical behaviors and problem behaviors and illnesses and injuries and all these things kind of manifesting within the
Yeah.
horse. Whereas if
Yeah.
you keep them in a way that allows them to have freedoms and choices and choose who their friends are and choose when they want to eat and where and, where they want to
Yeah.
be at different times of the day, suddenly so many of those problems that have been
Hmm.
manifesting unwind. And it can take
Yeah.
a long time, but you
Yeah.
kind of see it incrementally unwinding, and the difference in the physical health and the emotional health, which of course are
Yeah.
so interlinked, you can't separate the two. But
Yes.
it's fascinating to see just
Mm.
allowing the animal to have agency and choices
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
freedom.
definitely. No, I love that you highlighted all those things because it is, especially like you said in the horse world, like you just listing off all the things that, you guys control and like how there's very little room oftentimes for animals to actually have agency. And it's like you said, it's one of those things because at the same time, like, dogs do need structure, like consistency
Mhm.
and routine. And I'm sure with horses, there is like a level of consistency and routine as well. So it's like being able to balance that, but also, like you said, at the end of the day, you know, oftentimes, especially here, like in the domesticated dog world, we'll see dogs that like households where the dog is just kind of a side item. And
Mhm.
sometimes people take incredible care of their dogs. And there's people like that are taking our courses that are all in wanting to actually like, get on their dog's level, understand them deeper. But a big problem is that a lot of people just get dogs just because it's like, oh, I want the dog for myself. And I'm curious in the horse world if you see that at all because I know it might be a little different, but I'm curious kind of if that relates at all to anything there.
So I know Amy's got thoughts on this too. We all have thoughts on this. So so I think in some ways maybe the canine world is a little bit more ahead in certain areas than it is with horses. I think with horses we are still, and I won't refer to all of us because that is definitely not the case. There's been quite a movement over the
Yes.
past few years, especially of,
Yeah.
a greater level of awareness, meeting our horses' needs, and actually working in more of a horse-centered way, which is what we need. And that doesn't
Yeah.
mean to say that you can't go out and you can't do your pleasure rides or you can't go out and do
Exactly.
the competition that you want to. It just means that you are meeting your horse as your horse.
Yep.
But I think we have a quite a deep level of social conditioning passed through generations of how we are supposed to
Mm.
treat, train, and work with horses, how we're supposed to meet and manage their needs. But
Mm.
it's based on passed down information that
Yes.
when you then present a an alternative which is more aligned with actually,
Yep.
horses have been domesticated for the best part of 10,000 years, but their physiology
Yeah.
is pretty much unchanged. So
Yeah.
we we've got such a deep rut of a socially conditioned approach that I think
Yeah.
when it comes to presenting change, it can
Mm.
result in quite a lot of conflict internally for a person to be
Yeah.
able to make those changes that that horse may need.
Mm.
So I think in terms of management and training, we
Yeah.
are we are lagging in the equine community, whereas I think with dogs, I think we are further ahead in some elements of training, maybe not on a nervous system awareness level, but
Yeah.
certainly in the
Yeah.
way of finding out and working in a
Mm.
more behaviorally minded way. I mean, I know Amy does
Yeah.
quite a lot with the British Man Trailing Association, so I'd
Yeah.
be interested to know your thoughts on that, Amy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I think one of the key differences is that, with the exception of some working dogs, for the most part, our dogs live in our homes,
Yeah.
which I
Yep.
think is a big kind of step removed from what is happening with horses.
Mm.
So
Yep.
we've got that constant influence over the dog.
Yep.
Um, and I think, you know, obviously, of course, horses are herd animals, dogs
Mm-hmm.
are pack animals, but it's not quite the same thing. Um,
Yep.
but I think, it's very, very clear that horses need that time to be able to move around, that kind of freedom to be with their friends, and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think on the flip side, I sometimes see with dog, like there's a big thing in the UK. We're getting a lot of these dog parks, so they're kind of like secure fields.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
quite small secure fields where you can go let your dog off the lead. It can have a run around and so on.
Yeah.
And I feel really quite conflicted about this because I think there are certain dogs,
Hmm.
and I've got some friends who've got dogs who have quite deep-seated issues and that, can't be off the lead elsewhere and so on. This gives those dogs an opportunity to have that
Yeah.
level of freedom. But on the
Yeah.
flip side, I also think like my dogs, if that was the only time that they ever got to get off their lead,
Mm.
I think it would drive them, that they
Yeah.
need, I think they need to run. Like my boy
Yeah.
dog in particular,
Yeah.
he's a very active dog, and I can
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
he's building
Yeah.
anxiety because he is quite an anxious dog. But
Yeah.
one of
Yep.
the best ways for him to release that anxiety is to take him out somewhere and just let him have a good blast off the lead and to just
Yeah.
like run around and do dog things.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel
Mm.
like for me, I think that's something in the dog world that I see over here that I have this horrible feeling that the time is going to come when the only time you're going to be able to let your dog off the leash is if you take it to one of these secure field areas.
Yeah.
And I feel
Yeah.
like that's a bad thing for dogs.
Oh, it definitely is. And the thing is you nail so many points there. Exercise is such a key component for dogs and for the nervous system. Like even with humans, like if I'm ever
Mm,
anxious, I go for a walk. It helps
yeah,
recenter me right away because you're pushing that excess energy, you're moving it through the body because it gets stuck. And so with dogs too, like you said, it literally helps. It's like an outlet. And over here we have dog parks are a big thing in America, a really big thing. And I have mixed feelings too because there's a lot of issues at dog parks, for example, and I'm not sure how over there it works. Maybe there's more structure potentially. But here it's kind of a free for all. And what happens is we'll see a lot of incidents occur where like there's aggression or dogs go at each other, probably for a number of factors. The dogs aren't
yeah.
properly trained, they've never been off leash. It can honestly be a host of issues for the nervous system. But like you said, I do think not enough of us are not giving our dogs the proper outlets. Like you said, back in the day, dogs would live in, communities out on ranches. They would go explore. They would smell. Like, people right now, snifaris are kind of a big thing. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like what a snifari
Yeah,
Yes,
is.
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
And so, like, literally, dogs were made to go explore and sniff and use, those senses. And so, oftentimes, our dogs is sitting on the couch at home here. And it's like, what, like, are we actually meeting their needs? And so, if, getting your dogs out, like you said, I think it's great. I'll go out, I'll get my dog, off leash in certain areas that are safe, or I'll put her on a 30-foot line and I'll let her go explore out at a public park. And I've seen people that'll even bring home stuff from parks in boxes and let their dogs sniff it, like ways, kind of for enrichment and to help them. But I think that that is a really good point. I do see it like potentially that in the future, that could be a problem, definitely.
Mm,
Why do you guys think that that's where we are heading? Do you think that's, and this is
Mm.
something that me and Amy
Yeah.
talk about quite a lot, is the disconnection that humans are getting from themselves. So we're not meeting our own needs, therefore we are literally completely overlooking the needs of any animals
Yeah.
that we are the carers of, effectively.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you kind of nailed it there. We're so disembodied ourselves, therefore we can't even, if we can't meet our own needs, then we probably shouldn't, like you said, we can hardly meet our own dog's needs. And it's one of those things where, like you said, we're so technology oriented, right? That's
mhm.
part of why we're so disembodied. I'll be the first to say it. I mean, a lot of us are dopamine addicted, and, our brains are wired for quick hits. And so, therefore, to actually naturally get dopamine, like through sunlight, through exercise, through being out in nature, we're so disconnected. And therefore, if we're disconnected from ourselves, we just glance at our dogs and we don't even know how to naturally connect with them because we're just so disembodied. So a lot of somatics is really actually bringing yourself back into your body and then also helping your dog at the same time. So, like you said, I think it is a lot, like you said, we're technologically focused here. And I think we're just layering on so many things at a fast rate that we can't keep up. But I'm curious to kind of hear your side of things too, why you think like, this could be headed that direction as well.
Yeah, I think all of that is a big part of it. I also think there's a lot there's a lot of people who don't put the effort in to train their dogs properly.
Yep.
So they don't have a proper recall from the dog,
Yeah.
um, for example. So, you know, they then get out and start chasing wildlife and
Yeah.
livestock, like is a big thing, dogs chasing sheep, killing sheep,
Okay.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
and understandably, farmers are very upset about that.
Yeah.
And you know, so there's more and more restrictions on where you can take your dogs out
Yeah.
in the countryside. Um, you know, sort of understandably enough because of that. Um, so yeah, I just feel like it's this lack of ability to be able to see yourself and your own
Mhm.
needs and your own need for being outside and being in nature and kind of being
Yeah.
at one with the world, then being unable to transfer
Hmm.
that onto your dog or your horse, and then as a result thinking, well, it's okay for him just to have an hour a week running around in a so the dog parks here tend to work differently, I think. For the
Okay.
most park, it's not a free for all. Like you book the
That's for
space out for yourself for
wow. Oh, that's
like
nice.
a slot of time. So they're not massive. They're
Yeah.
usually like a small field.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes they'll have some agility equipment and so on, and you book it out for
Okay.
like an hour for you and your dog. Uh,
Okay.
so you don't have the issue of multiple dogs piling in, and you know
Mm,
there are some of that. If you go to a public park, it's different. But but then
yeah.
again, I feel like you know you go into the same place. Like I know my dogs love it when we go somewhere different and they've got somewhere new to explore, and you know
Yeah.
it's like, oh, if the only option they've ever got is just going to the same place, like maybe once or
Mm,
twice a week, and the rest of the time they're either on
yeah.
lead or not getting out
Yeah.
at all. It's like,
Hmm. Oh,
and then
yeah.
I feel like you look at different breeds of dog,
Yeah.
um,
Yep. Mm.
and you know maybe some of the little dogs can kind of cope with that okay, but you know
Yeah.
people who've got, I have a special interest in this because I have German Shepherds.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
So,
Yep.
you know,
Hmm.
I feel like we're a lot of the times getting inappropriate dogs for the
Yep.
lifestyles that we have and what we're able to offer them.
100%.
Um, and then the dog becomes reactive or, you know,
Yeah.
shut down or
Yep.
use your sofa up, you
Yeah.
know,
Uh-huh.
because we're not able to offer them what they intrinsically need.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you nailed that there too. I mean, that's a big issue here too in America is, like I said, no one really does. I don't say no one. I know some people do their
Mm,
research, but not a lot of people do proper breed research because
mm,
certain dogs have limited social flexibility. Some of them, like you said, they are higher drive dogs. They need more exercise. They need more space to run. Some dogs are cattle dogs. They need,
mm,
they're goal oriented. They need tasks. And so that is definitely that's definitely a problem that I see that's very prevalent. And I think that, going back to what you said at the end of the day, we were never, this is kind of my hot take. We were never really meant to like essentially like live inside the walls of a house 24/7. Like
mm,
we were meant to be out in nature. We were meant to be living in community with people. And, since the Industrial Revolution, we basically got the 9 to 5 going and, we're in our houses, we're hardly connected with people. We come home, we turn on our TV. It's like there's not a lot of genuine actual connection that is occurring in our society. And so going back to that, that affects our dogs. And I think they're taking a big hit of it. And, looking forward, I think that we're doing a lot of damage that we don't even realize. And it is kind of sad when you think about that. But there's also that means there's the ability to change. Like we can all change neuroplasticity. the brain has the ability to rewire. And I think that's the most encouraging thing in this is that, we can change and they can change too, and we can help within that. So, yeah.
And I think with people, we've said this a few times, I think on maybe recent episodes, that when it comes to changing our nervous system, we know that severe dysregulation, it takes months,
Mhm.
even years to be able to get that flexibility back
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
where it's healthier.
Hmm.
But little changes can happen within a 6 week period.
Oh,
And
Mm.
yeah.
with those little changes, we tend to overface. And it's really great that we're having this conversation because the changes that we try and do for ourselves in terms of nervous system resets or trying to kind of bring in healthier habits to our life, we tend to overface ourselves. So
Yes. Mhm.
bringing those tiny micro habits are
Yep.
going to set us in better stead to establish
Yeah.
them. And it's the same when working with our animals. We put a lot of pressure on
Mhm.
ourselves to then
Mm.
be able to do X, Y, and Z with our dogs, with our horses,
Mhm.
whichever remit we're working in. And that in itself is going to bring a level of upregulation to our nervous system, which actually we're not even in the right state to be applying
No,
this.
no,
Yeah.
no. You literally, I love that so much because I will tell you, one of the first things I try to teach people, and it's the hardest thing, is that when you go into a room to work with a dog, whether it's your dog or at a shelter or a rescue, you literally go in there and you take away all expectations. You're not trying to get some quick fix. You're not trying to see the dog just melt onto the ground. Those dogs I've been in, I remember one day I walked into the shelter and I was kind of having a rough day. I remember I was sitting on the floor and I wasn't really making any headway with this one dog. And then I realized I had expectations for this dog. I was sitting there and I was wanting a result. And I had to check back in with myself and be like, wow, when you bring expectations in, dogs know that. They know if you're there for a reason, if you're trying to get something out of them. I'm sure similar with horses, they can pick up on that. And that does shift your nervous system. That can
Hmm.
put you into fight or flight. And so, like you said, we often overthink this and we're so hard on ourselves. And so, therefore, like I said, a lot of the change truly does start with us because, once again, I know there's other factors that go into that, but we do play a big role in this. And so I love that you brought that up because expectation is definitely, yeah.
And that's the hardest
Yeah.
thing. And I think the misconception that a lot of individuals might have is going in with no expectation doesn't mean that you're going to be lacking in achievement.
Yeah.
It's changing the goalpost, but actually
Yes.
just allowing the ball to go where it needs to go.
Yeah, no, no, presence, literally just giving I can tell you the hardest thing for most people to do is to sit in a room by themselves and not do anything. To sit and not do anything and to
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
be with your own thoughts, your own emotions, and then you add a dog in there. It's a lot. And so to be able to practice the art of literally doing nothing is actually one of the healthiest things I believe that we've forgotten how to do because we're so wired to have to constantly be doing something. And so our nervous systems literally, I mean, they're so fried you could cook catfish on them. And it's like we got like there's
I like that. I'm going to use that in future.
I heard that a while back, and so I'll tell people, I'm like, man, I'm like, girl, your nervous system right there, it's fried. And so I just think though that being able to, like you said, to sit with our dogs and with the horses and to not have any expectation and to let them simply be, I think that's just so powerful. I really think that that is going back to the most natural way we were meant to interact with animals, truthfully.
Mm. Mm.
How do you approach that with people?
With people,
Mm.
yeah. So great question. For example, and I had a limited amount of time working with people before I really got into dogs because the dog avenue really took off. But in the realm of people, like think about it, for example, if someone is struggling, let's just say they're walking through trauma and I'm trying to, come alongside them and they're having a rough day, they're having a panic attack, for example. If I come in there and I sit beside them and I try to instantly start talking to them, or I instantly try to start fixing something, or I'm just like, touching them or like put my hand on their shoulder, like all those different things, in a different context could be helpful, but when someone is struggling and you go in there and you have all these expectations of trying to fix things and just get the behavior to die down, essentially the best thing you can do is oftentimes just sit with people. Like people need to feel seen, you know listening. And that's a lot of like with dogs, what we do is I sit there, I'll watch their body because that's how they communicate. I listen, like being able to actually just sit in the presence of someone else who is struggling and listen and not try to instantly rush into having expectations and fixing to try to get an outcome is very important. And I think so many of us also, that's a skill set that a lot of us are, struggling to build because that's something I don't think we were truthfully taught how to do necessarily. A lot of us were probably socially conditioned to try to fix things or to mask the emotions, and you know how that goes. And so being able to sit with people is something that I think correlates directly right over to dogs, truthfully.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree. I find it really rewarding just being able to hold space.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Holding space. Exactly. You nailed it. That is something that we have really, I feel like our capacity for that has really diminished.
Mm.
And it's something that I think that's also a skill that you grow too, holding capacity. It's not something overnight that, just comes like that. I think, like you said, those micro habits of learning how to hold space throughout the day for yourself, for others, and then for animals, it's one of those things that over time I think can really grow.
Yeah, yeah. And it's something that we all, like you said, you referred to neuroplasticity earlier on. It's something that we have in our remit to do and to change.
Yeah, exactly. It's we have the ability to change a lot of these things. And it comes down to, like you said, those micro habits, like neuroplasticity, it's not a light switch. And you mentioned, like it often takes weeks, if not months, to see changes. And I think we also are in a quick fix culture where we want to see instant results. I mean, I tell you what, just look at the technology realm. People will buy things in an instant if they think it could heal this or fix that. And honestly, coming back to even like why I got into this, it wasn't the medication, it wasn't, all the different tools that helped me. It was really getting back in touch and showing my nervous system, hey, you're safe. And like by doing those little things every day, by doing the somatic exercises and just building those habits, that's when we saw change over time. And so with dogs and horses, I believe the same thing can happen, and we're seeing that. People are taking the courses, they're doing these techniques, and they're saying, wow, like we went out on a walk last night, and instead of our dog like barking at this other dog, they actually didn't do that. And like it's the small little things that people are like starting to, oh my gosh, your dog. They're starting to see those changes, and it's beautiful. What a cutie. Oh.
He always likes to get involved.
You know what? That's okay. I'm here for it.
Go
I'm
on, get
curious.
down.
You guys have mentioned, especially you, Ross, you said that you've tried some of these techniques, like on your dog. Like, have you like seen any like of those micro changes or any di like, when you're doing those techniques, do you notice things?
Yes. So I'm I would probably say I'm really sensitive, which
Yeah.
puts me in which I always feel sensitivity is quite a superpower, but you also just need to be really good with your boundaries, which,
Yeah.
flux and changes. But
Yeah.
I can very easily walk into a room and pick up what's going on energetically
Yep.
with a person or with a dog, and especially with our two. So
Yeah.
Orla we've got who is Rotty Cross American Bull, and Loki's a Staffy. And
Ah.
Loki is the more susceptible to dysregulation from the two.
Yep. Yep.
And he is super, super switched on. I mean, I've done some man trailing with him and Amy, and the
Yeah.
changes that you do see in his confidence from doing the man trailing,
Mm.
I'm just
Yeah.
so happy for the little guy. But in the home environment, and again, this is something which I read a book by, I don't know if you've come across it, Your Dog is Your Mirror.
I've heard of it. I have not read it, but I'm very familiar with the title. Hmm.
By Kevin Behan, I think. If I
Yes.
apologize if I've pronounced that wrong, but I read
Yeah.
that at some point last year, and
Yeah.
it was the first time that I had come across a book that
Mm.
had spoke about more of the energetic influence
Yeah.
between humans and dogs, which didn't
Yeah.
discount behavioral theory and the scientific
Yeah.
approach. It was just a book that
Yeah.
was openly
Yeah.
focused on a different level.
Yep.
And it was something that I'd been thinking about for some time because Loki was a really confident little dude, but he
Yeah.
had a one event learning incident,
Mm.
and I wasn't made aware of it until about 3 years later.
Okay.
And he went through a period of being very flinchy around people, but he's never ever
Mm.
had, at this point, to my knowledge, anything that had, gone
Yeah.
sideways. So
Yeah.
since then, he has flowed between feeling safe, but also being more sort of sympathetic, hypervigilant. He
Yep.
does find it hard to settle at
Yep.
times. And it's very much, I think it's really cool that doing all of this work from a human perspective, from a horse perspective, I'm now going, we are our dog's primary influencer with the environment that we create, including
Hmm.
ourselves. So
Yep.
I've been trying to make some changes very
Yeah.
consciously to
Yeah.
how I can help him within his environment, whether that is doing some man trailing with Amy, whether that
Yeah.
is taking him out for, a longer walk, whether that is doing enrichment exercises around the house. But
Yeah.
it was when I came across your work that I was going, somatics. Ha, of course.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it is touch-based work, which
Yeah.
I do a lot of myofascial trauma work with horses from a bodywork perspective. So I access their body and their nervous system through touch.
Yep. Yep. Hmm.
And I'm like, okay, why am I not doing
Yeah.
this with Loki? So I saw some of like the little chest rubs
Yeah.
that you had
Yeah.
done, and he is super receptive to that. And like you said earlier, that's something that I've been doing with Loki for years,
Hmm.
but I'm
Yeah.
now doing it with a different intention, with a
Mm.
different touch. And, I kind of see those little changes of those eye blinks,
Yeah.
some little licks, maybe some, looking away. And Loki is a primary example of you can't go
Yeah.
up to him and then go and hug him and bring him in because he's like, I'm going to tolerate it. I need to jump off.
Yep.
Mm.
But when
Hmm.
he comes to you and he feels
Yeah.
safe, he will melt. And I'm the primary melter. He follows me round. And I'd
Yeah.
rather him be
Yep.
able to settle in the environment, which he does, but it fluctuates
Yeah.
on time of day, of course,
Yeah.
like
Of
routines,
course.
different people
Yep.
in the house, what's happening on that day-to-day basis.
Oh yeah.
And he finds upstairs in the bedroom a safe place
Hmm. Okay.
where he likes to go. It's literally 7:30, 8 o'clock, and he's there sat at the bottom of the stairs, like, we're going up to bed now. And I literally thought about it. And when you just have those very obvious perspective shifts, I'm like,
Yeah.
upstairs, everything's quiet, everywhere's chilled. So it's a room he obviously associates with
Yep. Home.
effectively that calm ventral vagal. If we're upstairs, I might be doing yoga, I might be watching TV, me and my girlfriend might be upstairs reading. But do you know what I mean? It's sort of very,
Yeah.
whereas it's busier downstairs, there's people coming and going. So he's flitting between one room to the next.
Yep.
So I have played about with these exercises, setting him up
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
either the day or even if I'm just there chilling with him, just
Yeah.
literally doing a few of the exercises that you suggest. And it's just so cool to watch him be able
Yeah.
to come down a notch. But it's that
Yeah.
consistency to be mindful enough to continue doing it and not go, I've done it 3 days on a row. Why is he not
Mm.
doing X, Y, Z?
Yeah, no. Uh-huh. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you were so observant and that you noticed that and that, like you said, you were like, oh, I've done this before, but now it's with a different intention. And you're observing. And when you actually watch your dog and you look at their body language, like you watch their eyes, you watch their mouth, their ears, all those things, like you said, once you see it, you can't unsee it. When you see those signals, when they're showing you, hey, I'm shifting into a different nervous system state. And I love that the fact that you were able to know too that, okay, he associates your upstairs with being a safe place. Like that's where he often enters, that ventral vagal zone. And, I think dogs need spaces like that. They need to know that there's a place accessible where they associate it with calm. But I love overall that, you're seeing those little micro changes, and you're right. It's not something you don't do it like one time, one day, and you're like, okay, wait, we're done. It's like, no, we got to keep doing this. And I really believe like if people put the work in, if they intentionally like do this, like I tell people, try it 2 to 3 times a day. It takes you 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, 2 to 3 times a day. That's 15 minutes out of your day. There's 24 hours in a day. We make time for what we prioritize. And, do that for 30 days. I guarantee you, you will see some shift. It might not be massive, but I guarantee you, you will start to see something. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you mentioned, sorry, Rose, you mentioned this earlier. So,
Yeah.
one of the common things that both me and Amy come across is horses shutting down, which are
Mm.
very often mistaken for calm when we know
Mm.
they're not. So, you mentioned earlier about dogs that are shut down and dogs that are calm. So, could you sort of like elaborate on what you tend to see between calm and shut down? Because I think people most often go for help when they have got
Yeah.
a dog, a horse, or an animal that is showing overtly reactive behavior,
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm.
opposed
Yeah.
to
Yep.
animals that are shutting down, which we just,
Yeah.
interpret in the wrong way.
Yeah, no, interpreting. I like that word a lot because what I teach people essentially is everything's in context. The nervous system does not speak in words, it speaks in sentences. And so, for a dog, for example, that people might be questioning, is it calm or shut down? I look at the full picture. I don't just look at that one little snapshot. I go and I assess, okay, well, has the dog been eating normally? Are they getting their exercise? I look at the full picture, and then I look at their body language though. Like when someone comes up and tries to engage with them, you know, do they look like are they showing signs of submissive or being submissive? And there's a very distinct difference between calm and shut down because calm is connected. Calm is a healthy state. The dog will still go play. They'll still go eat. They'll interact with you. That's the biggest thing is shut down dogs will struggle to interact with you. And they'll just sit there and they'll take it and they'll just be like, okay, when's this over? And,
Mm.
a calm dog will sit there. They won't be rigid or tense. Like I'm always looking at a dog's full body, like in the realm of, for example, reactivity. Like if there's a dog that licks their lips, and let's just say someone walked by the window and their body's tense, and we see that lip lick, I would tell people that dog is showing signs of stress because there was a trigger in the environment. The rest of their body got tense, and then they licked their lips. But let's say, like, hey, it's evening time, and you're on the couch, you're watching a movie, your dog comes up, they rest their head on your lap, and then you see them lick their lips and their body's soft and loose. Okay, that's calm. And so, like with shutdown and calm, it's a little trickier because they look so similar, but it comes down to really watching the body language. And like I said, food is a really big one. Like if they're not eating normally, first and foremost, like I said, always if you have a concern, I tell people go do check with your vet. Make sure there isn't something serious occurring medically. But a lot of times your dog can often be shut down and you don't even realize it.
Mm.
And so and I mean a lot of it, once again, you see a lot of shutdown dogs in shelters and rescues because essentially it's at the bottom of those three nervous system states. It's when the dog is basically like, well, you know what? I'm just conserving all my energy here to survive. And so high stress environments often push dogs eventually into shutdown because it goes, eventually they start out reactive and then after that they go down into shutdown. And so it's like at the bottom of the staircase. And so it's probably one of the trickiest things and a very common question that people ask is, okay, hey, how do I know? And so, yeah.
So what would you say in your experience with your work, what is the difference between training and regulation? Because I think that's probably a concept that a lot
Mm.
of people might link together into the same
Yeah.
boat, but I don't necessarily think it
Mhm.
is the same thing.
Yeah, very, very different, yet they go hand in hand because what we're seeing, so essentially, in a dog's brain, there's a part of their brain called the neocortex, and humans have a prefrontal cortex, and they're very similar to a dog's. It's the part that really controls like the logical decision making, executive functioning. And when you're training a dog, essentially that neocortex is online. But if a dog is dysregulated, that part of their brain is going to literally go offline because it's going to go down into the lower parts of the brain for survival. So essentially, training a dog, like we'll see dogs that fail training or they just aren't able to be trained, and it's because they're not actually regulated first for that part of their brain to come online and to be functioning, to be able to take in essentially that information. Like, for example, and this might be a horrible metaphor, I've thrown it out before, but I'm like, if you're in a house and let's just say all of a sudden the house is on fire and someone hands you a 20-page math test, you're not going to be able to take the math test because your house is on fire. And so with training, and like I said, it's very vivid, but I'm trying to get a point across to people. I tell them that is you can't train a dog properly unless they're regulated. And we're not saying we're not looking for perfection, but regulation is the foundation. Like that's one of our taglines. You know, if a dog is regulated, training then is necessary and it is very helpful, but it ties right in with somatics because you're going to enhance the training outcomes if the dog is regulated versus if they're in fight or flight. It's going to take longer, it's going to drag the process out. And so essentially, regulation is that foundation, and then training builds upon that, those practical skills that dogs do need. So, yeah.
And I think that's something that we can apply across the board.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the horse world, how do you see that playing out?
Horribly, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
I'm not even going to sugarcoat it because the amount of times that training approaches, and again,
Mm,
I'm going with training here, what people think they are accomplishing is when that horse is upregulated and already in a heightened sympathetic or dorsal tone.
yeah.
And because horses are obviously prey animals, they have a slightly more their amygdala is
Yep.
going to be more active than
Exactly.
in a predator to varying degrees. Obviously, individuals will have different experiences of that,
Mm.
but as a whole, their brain is wired to be able to
Mm,
kind of protect themselves. And in a training scenario, the amount of times horses are over threshold and people are still hammering them to try and get
mm,
results. And it's really disappointing because it is one of those situations where it can be so easily averted.
yeah. Exactly. Mm. That
But
is
I think it,
very,
it comes
yeah.
down to that thing though, if you need to recognize what you're looking at.
Hmm.
Yes. And this is
And
the thing
Yeah.
that I sometimes struggle a little bit with is the fact that the information is out there.
hmm
It's accessible.
mm.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
all we need to do is look on social media and sorry, obviously my dogs are going now.
It's okay. You're good.
Um, all we have to do is look on social media, and there are reels and reels of highlighted behavior of horses,
Yeah.
which is put with some funny music and
Mm.
Mm.
highlighted as being, amusing, when actually this is not good training. That horse is really
Yeah.
struggling. That horse
Yeah.
needs help.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
and that I think again just
Yep.
provides the wrong information
Yeah.
for people within the equine industry because that sort of
Mm.
stuff even shows up on my algorithm and it's stuff that I'm
Yeah.
constantly going, don't want to see it, don't want to see it. I
Yeah.
know it happens, don't want to see it.
Oh, yeah.
So it's flooding the market with, oh, that my horse is bucking and taking off. Ha ha ha. No, it's not funny. That
Yeah.
horse is
Mm.
way over threshold and exhibiting survival responses.
Yeah, that's such a valid point that, and I never really thought about that until you mentioned that, but it is true. We are inundated and flooded with all sorts of reels and stuff where we basically are just coding over the fact that, oh, this is normal. This is something to laugh at when actually we're totally dismissing behavior that's basically warning signs and the animal being like, hey, help. Like you said, I'm over a threshold and we're just over here like you said, monetizing on it. And it's just, yeah, so many of us, like you said, the information is accessible. I think where people have not been properly educated is the observation of it, though. I think a lot of people, especially for dogs at least, and maybe horses, it's different. Most people have not really been taught to actually observe proper dog body language. They don't really know the signs. People will look and they'll be like, oh, the dog's happy. I'm like, no, that dog is over threshold. They're stressed right now. And like you said, with horses, I'm curious, how well do you feel like people are educated on observing horse body language?
Not that well, I don't think. I
No.
think most, like there's some obvious signs that I think,
Yes.
everybody knows.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but I think interestingly, I had Ross come out talk to some of my students at the weekend about the nervous system and horse
Yeah.
body language and all this kind of stuff. So this is a very topical conversation this week. Um, but I think you know most of us you get involved with horses, you learn to ride horses. You kind of learn some obvious things like the horse puts its ears back or the horse is t swishing its tail and this kind of thing. But for the most part, you don't get taught the really early subtle signs. Like,
Yep.
so you're so far up the cascade before you even
Yeah.
realize there's an issue for the animal.
Mm. Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you
Uh-huh.
know,
Yeah.
I think very lucky to have people like Ross who are able to share with their clients much more of these kind of subtle
Yeah.
subtle signs. And
Yeah.
saying hopefully, that's what we're trying to teach to the hoof trimming students as well, is being able to recognize those early signs of
Mm.
dysregulation and stress within the horse so that you can step away, give them some time to
Yeah.
process or change things up to make them feel more comfortable in the environment and before it reaches a level where they're beyond capacity to learn and everything goes
Yeah.
horribly wrong.
Yeah, no, and that's where you see, like you said, those early warning signs are
Mm,
so vital because if you miss them, that behavior can escalate. And before you know it, like in the dog world, we see dogs that bite or attack people. And I can't tell you an exact percentage, but I guarantee you there's always signs. They're giving you micro
mm,
signals before that attack. And so many of us do not know and if we
mm.
knew, I guarantee you we could diminish a lot of those issues just by watching and giving space and slowing down our emotions and actually just observing what they're trying to communicate. So I love that you see the same thing with horses. There's a lot of carryovers here.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think, and I'll always openly say this, the way that I work, I'm not a fixer. I'm not going to come out and solve a behavior in one go
Yeah.
because it's definitely more nuanced than that. Some little tweaks might really help and solve. Great. A lot of the time I do get long-term horses because they have been in,
Yeah.
such a state of chronic dysregulation or chronic stress that it takes that time to unpick. But I
Yeah.
think in terms of a level of recognition, someone may watch what I do and think it's really quiet and boring because I am not pushing a horse to a stage for entertainment purposes or to look good and looks like I'm making a change. It's not about me, it's about the horse.
Mm,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would rather educate people and, well, not that would rather, I would rather educate people, but also what am I doing to support that
Yeah.
horse? If I'm recognizing with this knowledge that that horse is tipping over threshold, we know life is life and things happen. So if a horse tips over threshold, it's my responsibility to go, okay, what happened? What amounted
Yep.
to that? What was missed? or what was the factor that pushed them over? How can I
Yeah.
support that horse to come down in a more regulated way? So
Yeah.
it's not just going, don't tip that horse
Yeah.
over threshold. We're looking to work in that horse-centered way that works with their nervous system and their body language awareness. At the same time as going, how can I also support the situation if things go sideways for whatever reason? Because we can only control so much in the
Yeah.
environment.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. And I love that you mentioned just that, like you said, it's not always loud and flashy, and you don't, on the first try, you're not going to be able to fix the entire thing. You're not going to be able to get rid of, like in the dog world, reactivity or aggression in one go. I mean, and like with horses too, like there's so many, like you said, it's repeated consistency to get those new neural pathways to fire for neuroplasticity to take place. And like you said, at the end of the day, you're like, I'm there for the horse. And same, like we are here for the dogs. And so a lot of times, like the reels that we put out and stuff, you know, we're trying to educate people on like, look at that little micro signal. Like, look at how their eyes close for like 2 seconds. It might not
Mm.
be flashy, but that's actually really important. And like, so many things like on social media, it's all about, like you said, what is gonna catch people's eyes. And it's at the end of the day, like the work that we're both doing, it's quiet, it's kind of behind the scenes, and it's foundational though. And that's what's so important about it, is that's what's going to get you the most long-term results, and not pushing, the horse over their threshold when you work with them, or same with the dog, following their nervous system and what their capacity and tolerance is in that day. So it's, yeah, very much prevalent.
One of Amy's students over the weekend asked a really, really cool question, and I replied with something that was along the lines of, "Don't lay tension on top of tension."
Oh, that's that's good. I like that, because we just did the other week, I put a reel out and I was explaining how like your dog, and this is probably could be used for horses too. Your dog's born with a backpack, and maybe you saw this, but over
Yes, I saw
time
this. Yes, I liked it.
rocks get dropped into the backpack, and that's like stress. And eventually, if the dog never has an outlet or never gets the chance to regulate, that backpack gets so heavy that it literally spills out in the form of behavior. And
Mm.
so you start adding in rocks upon rocks each day, and like you said, that's when you start to see things basically manifest in the dog's body through behavior. And I'm sure with horses too. And it's like, are we giving them a chance to actually dump the rocks out of the backpack?
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of the time we aren't. And going back to what we were saying earlier about the environmental factor, there's creating that space within, we'll say,
Yeah.
a training or a targeted regulatory approach, but what's happening for the rest, like Amy was saying, what's happening for the rest of the time?
Mm.
Are they able to interact with their mates? Are they able to kind of, let off
Yeah.
some physical steam around the field? Just, present those natural behaviors that
Hmm.
they would need to do to work through that tension on whatever level that is. But, a lot of the time that isn't provided.
Yeah. Mm. That's very valid. I think the environment is something that we see over here. I mean, shelters, for example, prime example. And not to, like I said, people, there are some of the sweetest people I've met that are doing their best to help these dogs in shelters. And I'm very supportive of them trying to help dogs. The environment, though, it's rough. And you see how that environment affects the dogs. Like there's constant noise. I mean, dogs are barking, and there's never like there's constant stimuli. A lot of the shelters,
Mm.
dogs can see across the way to the other dogs in the kennels, and you know they're in a small confined space. Like you put all these factors together, fluorescent lighting, there's no windows to look out. Like it's basically just, a recipe for a nervous system to just escalate, versus you put a dog, like you said, in a place where they have a wide open field to run in. There's natural light, they can connect with their owner or other dogs, and they're getting proper exercise. Like environment is key. I mean, you look at people, like I always tell, some of my people that I teach, if I push you in like a 3x3 space for one day and you had no natural light and you weren't able to move at all and there were people shouting, by the end of that day, you are going to be at the end of your rope. And so
Mm.
environment, like I think we downplay environment a lot and forget that that is super vital to the nervous system. It's just really impactful.
Yeah, I've seen that at Amy's yard. So Amy, I think you mentioned earlier, didn't you? Like Amy runs a track system,
Mm.
which,
Okay.
um, so a track system is effectively more of a natural boarding facility, for
Wow.
horses that sort of simulates
Yeah,
movement
it tries to
and
as much as possible.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And you've obviously seen some amazing changes, like Prince. We
Mm.
speak about Prince quite regularly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It, it, it's the change that you see from taking the horse. I think when you've got a horse that's got trauma kind of embedded into the nervous system,
Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
just putting them in a situation where they can be a horse and can
Yeah.
make their own choices. And I'm such a massive believer in movement for horses being so important, like free movement. It's such a massive thing for mental well-being as well as physical
Yeah.
well-being.
Yeah.
Then you just see over time the changes in them. And
Mm.
it's fascinating that you see the emotional and physical changes going hand in hand.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
the the horse becomes much more relaxed and they're no longer under that kind of chronic stress, and suddenly the physical
Mm.
issues melt
Yeah.
away.
Yeah. Uh-huh. That's
Um, yeah, it's it's very interesting to see. And it's
I
in some ways it's really like it's very rewarding, but in some ways it's also really frustrating because it's like it's actually not difficult in
mhm.
a lot of ways. Like if you provide the animal with what its body needs and what it
Yeah.
needs emotionally, a load of
Hmm.
this shit goes away, you know.
Yeah. No.
So
It
many of these
it
problems that we have, and that our
yeah.
animals have, are so much of our creation. And in a lot of the times, it's done with I think one of the saddest things is it's done with good intentions, like the road to hell
Mhm.
being paved with good intentions. People really want to do the best.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're sending the horse to the really expensive livery yard and they're putting it on the really expensive food and they're
Mm.
having the expensive farrier, and then because it's got shoes on and they don't want the horse to get injured, they can't possibly put it in a paddock with another horse because, you know, they might hurt each other. And before you know it, like all these things that you're
Yeah.
trying, and this was me a few years ago,
Yeah.
like I'm not
Yeah.
not belittling anyone for where they're at, but
No.
this
Yep,
was,
same.
but suddenly, you know, you come away from it and you think, blimey, you know, in a lot of ways, what I do with my horses now is so simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Strips away all of that complexity of trying to micromanage and trying to do the best for them in that sense, and just kind of, you know, take
Yeah.
care of their needs, but just allow them to behave as they're intended to.
Yeah. I it is a lot of it is an us problem, and I say that, like I said, none of us, like, we're
Mm,
not perfect, and I think
no.
a lot of us have good intentions, but a lot of it, like you said, we have created those problems. And so therefore I firmly believe, well, if we can create the problem, we can create part of the solution.
Yeah.
And even just going back to what you said on your horses with free movement, I just wanted to note, because I love it, like that even ties into like the fascia, which that's what, that holds stress in the body. And so fascia gets dehydrated when there isn't movement, but when it's moving, it gets hydrated and it can glide. And that's when stress can help, release out of the body. So I think that's why movement, so many of us don't realize, for ourselves and for animals, it's so, so healing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to have an office job, and I was
Okay.
sat at a desk and was commuting into work on the train every day. And I was chronically exhausted and
Mm,
verging on being unwell and depressed. And
yeah.
I didn't realize how badly it was affecting me until I
Yeah.
stopped doing it.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
I'm outside every day. I'm in the open air. I'm working with horses. My body gets loads of movement,
Yeah.
and I'm so much better for it.
Yeah. There's no going back once you
No,
realize
no.
how helpful it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So, what would you suggest, Rose, for people at home listening? What practical ways can people support their dog's nervous system, their own nervous system? Any words of advice there for people?
You know, if I could give one piece of advice, it would be this: slow down. Like, just slow down. Just basically, essentially, the pace that you're going at right now. If there was a dial, turn that dial and just like basically, we're going at such a fast rate that our bodies can't maintain with, and our nervous systems, like I said, they are. A lot of them are fried. We get up in the morning and we hurry to make breakfast, and we sit down and we like usually scroll while we eat our food, or and we like scarf it down, and then we're on to the next thing, and we're just going and going. And at the end of the day, if we can slow down, and essentially slowing down even basically tells the nervous system too, you are safe. When we're moving at a slower pace in general, like that translates to safety in the body. And that's one of the most practical, free things you can start today is to just take things slower. Eat your food, like eat it at a really slow rate. I've done this. I've told people to try this before. Like, try eating one of your meals really slow, and you'll realize how hard it is because we're so trained to just like shovel it in and go get on to the next thing. Like when you're folding your laundry, like fold it really slow. You're probably like, this woman's crazy. Well, I've tried it though. And the thing is there's just something really beautiful about being able to slow down all the things that we're basically rushing to get through in a day because they're going to be there tomorrow. Like,
Yeah.
the laundry's always going to be there. We're always going to have meals to eat. And the pace at what we do these things sets the tone long term for our nervous system. And so we really can start by essentially slowing down what we're doing right here and right now. And your dogs watch that. They're watching the pacing of how you're moving through life. And so that is so key. Like you said, they become a mirror in that sense. So aside from the hands-on techniques that we have courses and whatnot for, the biggest thing is slowing down.
Yeah, I think that's massively valuable.
It's so simple and it probably sounds, well, that's too easy, but it's actually probably, I think, the hardest, most difficult thing for any of us to do in this world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And I think when people go to slow down, I think there's a difference between slowing down and stopping. So I think people would find it easier to slow down because you're still in motion, as opposed to, like we were saying earlier, just sit in a room doing nothing.
Mm-hmm.
mm,
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, it's almost like when you're withdrawing from something, you don't do cold turkey because it won't usually go well. So in this case, for the nervous system, don't try to cold turkey it. Just start like one thing a day. Even if like slowing everything down seems overwhelming, start with slowing one thing down. Just one thing.
That one habit first.
mm.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
That'll build over time.
Yes.
Mm.
So you mentioned courses. Tell us
Yes.
about
Tell us
them.
more.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so we have so for people that want like the foundations of what canine somatics are, we have a foundational course and it's called Dog Somatics 101. And we basically go through and we teach the foundations of nervous system regulation for dogs. What does it look like practically for you and your dog at home? And we show the techniques. There's videos, there's some written modules, some quizzes. It's a pretty condensed short course. It's nothing intensive. It's really meant for anyone like to just basically step in there and take it. Like you could start today and it wouldn't be overwhelming. It's not full of a lot of scientific terminology. It's meant for beginners, and I recommend that all people usually start there. So we have that available. And then our next step up, we have a pro series that we just dropped back in May. So that's an actual certification track, which is a whole different ball game. So we have about 75 students right now that are getting certified in the Waldrup Somatic Method, and it's a
Amazing.
community, and there's all sorts of in-depth discussions and video work. We're basically diving into the neurobiology behind all of it. So Dog Somatics 1 is kind of essentially, okay, hey, this is the watered down version of it. It's still giving you the meat and potatoes, but the Pro Series is like, okay, if you want to go practice this out publicly as your career, here's where to start. And so it's a deep dive into canine somatics. And then in between that, we're in process. We're going to have another course dropping here, hopefully in the next month or so, which is going to be kind of mid-level for people that don't want to do it as a career, but they also want more than what Dog Somatics 101 offers.
Amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
Nice.
that's
thank
really
you.
cool.
A lot to
Yeah,
fill your boots with. A lot to fill your boots with.
Yeah,
yes,
that's really cool.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Because
Well, we'll
I
make
have,
sure that we put links to all of your stuff in
Yeah.
the show notes for the episode so people can kind of come and check you out and
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
I
I'd appreciate that.
yeah, no, I think it's such a cool thing that you're doing and I think the timing of it is great, you know. I
Mm.
think people
Yeah.
are wanting this stuff now. Um
Mhm.
and yeah, I just think it's such a cool thing. So yeah, I'm sure there'll be lots of people that will be interested in finding out more and following all the stuff that you're doing.
I appreciate that. I do agree. I think the time is now. People
Mm,
realize that there's a different way to go about this. And so I definitely encourage anyone, yeah, check those links out. Feel free if you have questions, you can email us and our team will get back to you. And yes, I'm very honored that you asked us to come on the podcast here. I think this has been an incredible conversation. I hope that you guys stepped away with some things. I learned quite a
100%.
lot on your side, and yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
No, it's been a really good conversation. Could happily sit here for another couple of hours, but
Yeah.
easily, easily.
No, I know. I feel like there needs to be a part two at some point.
I think there must. Yeah,
I'm sure we
100%.
can arrange that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
definitely.
before we let you get on with your day, Rose, so where can people find you? So as Amy said, there will be links in the bio for everyone
Yeah.
to seek your social media and your websites out. But just for anyone listening, where can they
Yeah.
find you?
Great question. So we can be found on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and then we have a main website. It's just waldrupsomatic.com. And so we have quite a few, like I said, social platforms there. We regularly are posting weekly. There's tips, there's reels and carousels with a lot of information that you can hop on there today and probably take home stuff that you don't even have to pay for.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really
Excellent.
cool.
Yeah,
Excellent. And
thank
am I right that you are currently on tour in Arizona?
Yes, correct. We are on the nervous system tour. That's what we're calling it. And we are going around to different shelters and rescues here. And we're just going in, we're getting hands-on with dogs, teaching people the method, and really just trying to share this information as we go.
Amazing. I mean, I've got
Fantastic.
a massive soft spot for rescues anyway. I used to work in rescues before horses.
Oh, exciting.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So big soft spot for the dogs in
Mm,
shelters. Have you
yeah.
got any plans to maybe expand that tour to different states in the future?
So are you mentioning like overseas?
Well, I mean,
Maybe.
maybe. I mean, if it happens, it happens. But are you looking at any sort of expansion plans to take your work elsewhere, whether that is in the States or overseas?
Yeah, so we're right now, like I said, we're originally based in Iowa and we have traveled down to Arizona. We're going to be going into LA and California. We're going to spend probably quite some time there because there's a lot of crises occurring in the shelter system there. And then we're going to be going up the coast, most likely into Oregon and Washington. and then we'll be like kind of coming back down through Colorado, Utah. Essentially, we're going to kind of go where we see the greatest needs are at. And eventually, our plan is to put down like a nervous system sanctuary at some place in the
Oh,
States.
wow.
Essentially, like a facility where we can take in some of those hard cases of dogs that really need hands-on nervous system work combined with having professional training on site.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
That sounds
But
incredible.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so
we're
exciting.
we're excited. And once again, internationally is not out of the picture. A lot of our students surprisingly come from Europe, and we have a lot of people in the UK as well.
Fabulous.
So
Yeah,
I would not, yeah, like I said, everything's on the table. So
yeah, amazing.
Let's
Yeah,
watch
yeah.
this space then.
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
No. Like I said, I'll keep you posted if we ever decide to come overseas for sure.
Please do. Please do.
Yeah. No, I'm excited for the future. I think a lot is in store.
Yeah, yeah, things are changing for sure.
Yes.
Yeah,
And thank you for being a part of that change for the dogs.
Yes. Well, thank you for what you're doing in the horse world as well. I think collectively as a whole, we can really make a change together.
Yes, we can.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, that feels like a beautiful point to draw things to a close. Um, massive thank you again, Rose, from me and Ross, and also from all the listeners. I'm sure that this is going to have really opened a lot of people's minds to different ways of
Yeah.
looking at things and get them much more curious about what's going on with their dogs. So, yeah, I think it's been fantastic. So, thank you very much once again. And to our listeners, thank you. Really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. As always, we would be really grateful if you could like, share, add a little positive comment if you've enjoyed what you heard. And that brings us to the close of another episode of the Little Horse Big Conversation podcast.